Welcome. I'm Nikki Jovicic from LookUpStrata, and for this webinar session, I'm joined by Leanne Habib from Premium Strata. In this webinar, Leanne will be talking about how you can get the most out of your Strata Manager. Are you fully accessing your Strata Manager's knowledge and expertise to gain the most assistance when times get tough? Good Strata Managing Agents allow you to access their extensive practices and procedures, systems, knowledge and expertise to assist committees through difficult times. Leanne has a presentation on this topic, and then we'll move on to questions. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that the information contained in this session, including the discussions that arise from submitted questions, is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as legal advice. You should seek independent advice before acting on the information contained in this session. For Strata managers who are joining us today, I see we've had a few pop their comments in already. This session attracts half a CPD point from SCA, so please stand by. You'll receive an automatic email confirming your attendance over the next day. This email contains instructions for how to apply for the points. I'm delighted to introduce our panellists today, Leanne Habib from Premium Strata. Leanne, the founder of Premium Strata, is a licensed strata and community manager and a real estate managing agent with 23 years experience. Having previously worked in various senior management roles with large strata and community agencies around Sydney, Leanne created Premium Strata in 2007 and its sister company Premium Building Management in 2015. Leanne is often called on to contribute her expert opinion on articles, industry changes and topical industry matters. Sydney's prominent schemes seek Leanne's guidance, knowing her experience, attention to detail and passion for policies and procedures will ensure the foundations of any scheme are robust and fit for purpose. Her years of experience affords her the unique ability of looking at challenges from all perspectives, developer, consultant, future owners, and providing a viable practical solution. Leanne is a regular contributor to LookUpStrata. What many people may not be aware of is that Leanne was our very first person to come on board with to assist with Q&As, and that was around about 2015. And since then, Leanne has responded to hundreds and hundreds of questions. Leanne is the author or co-author of well over 80 articles on the LookUpStrata site, and almost all of these articles contain multiple responses. Leanne's responses assist thousands of New South Wales lot owners every month. Premium Strata regularly appears in our Monday and Wednesday newsletters and monthly New South Wales Strata magazines. And this is Leanne's second time joining us for a webinar. We conducted a very popular New South Wales Ask Us Anything webinar with Premium Strata. I think it was around a year ago, actually. So I'll leave you with Leanne for today's presentation, and I'll join you all a little bit later. I'll be in chat in the meantime. And yeah, hopefully we can cover some questions as well and have a bit more of a discussion. So thanks very much, Leanne, and welcome to today's session.
Thanks, Nikki. It's great to be back. It's great to be online. I know we've got quite a few that have joined us this morning, which is fantastic. And we are covering off, I would say, a very broad topic because it's how do we assist committee members during difficult times. And I think it comes back down to the type of difficulty. So today's session, I've really honed in on what I think is the core skill or focus that we should be focusing on as managing agents when we're assisting strata committees during difficult times. So I'm going to share my screen so we can bring up the PowerPoint. Hopefully everyone can see that. But I'm going to start off with, hang on, let me just.
Yeah, that looks good, Leanne, too. It looks very clear on the screen.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to start off just very high level and briefly, what is the Strata Manager's role, so that we can understand that before we then focus on how does a managing agent assist committee members during difficult times. Very high level, a managing agent is acting on the instructions of the owners corporation and strata committee members as a whole. So the way I define it is that the agent is the agent and the owners corporation is the principal. They're acting on those instructions given to them by their committee members and the principal. However, the managing agent has to be and is instrumental in leading strata committees through difficult times, whether that might be a financial difficulty, it could be building defects, it could be legal proceedings generally, and it can even be disharmony and disputes within the strata scheme, which is often the case. However, for me, I look at it as a partnership. The strata managing agent partners with the strata committee to effectively manage the building. The owners corporation appoint the strata committee to manage the day-to-day issues on their behalf, but they also equally appoint the managing agent to also manage those issues on a day-to-day basis. However, our role as managing agents is to execute the decisions that are made by the Strata Committee on a day-to-day basis, and the committee's role is to make those decisions. But it's important that the Strata Managing Agent provides leadership. For me, leadership is the key. Giving that leadership to Strata Committee members will enable them to be fully informed and make those decisions. And leadership is all about the guidance. I'm going to touch on the areas of leadership that I think assist committee members during difficult times. And there's multiple hats. We've got leadership in relation to experts. We've got leadership in relation to knowledge and expertise, practical approach, management of communications, that's essential as well. And also applying a strategy, having leadership on how we move forward, how do we do things. Going into experts. So experts is all about knowing when to bring in the experts, what type of experts to use. For example, do we bring in a structural expert because we've got structural issues? Do we bring in a hydraulics expert because there's a hydraulic issue? But not only knowing when to bring them and what type of experts to bring in, but also having that knowledge in how to brief the expert. That's important too. So I'll give you an example. If it was a defects claim, for example, and you needed an expert, bringing an expert to identify that we have a defect is one step, but it's important that that expert is also identifying that not only is it a defect, but how's it a defect under the Building Code of Australia? Because we want to make sure that when we're investing in a defects report, as one example, it is a report that can be used for litigation purposes. If defects are going to head to a proceedings, if there's going to be legal disputes about it, you want to make sure that you're investing in an expert, but then the brief to the expert is also going to be beneficial to the owners corporation for its purpose, whether it's legal proceedings, whether it's a dispute between a lot owner and owners corporation. For example, there could be a dispute about acoustics. You've got a lot owner that is complaining that, they're constantly being disturbed by the sounds of surrounding units. And those units are saying we're just living everyday life, but it's still creating a noise disturbance for other residents. How do you then resolve an issue like that? For me, I would then rely on having an acoustic consultant coming in, carrying out an acoustic assessment to determine, is there a failure with the common property, or are the acoustic levels at a reasonable level? So for me, providing leadership on experts is crucial. Ensuring you've got the right expert, ensuring that you've briefed the expert correctly, but making sure that the expert does prepare the report that is going to be needed for the owners corporation's purpose, whether it be litigation or whether it be to resolve a dispute or to give them direction on how they move forward. A practical approach, I think, is always important during any difficult time. And I think as part of leadership, managing agents would provide a proactive approach. It's very important to be proactive. You don't want an issue to manifest and get bigger than it needs to be. Getting in early, for me, is a good start. It is addressing the problem earlier. But also when we've got a very large problem, it's very hard to get lost in and think, oh, wow, this is really overwhelming. This is a huge problem. How are we going to ever tackle this? I find breaking a larger problem into smaller, more manageable staged ones is a lot easier to then tackle and address. But it's important as well that when we're giving leadership to Strata Committee members on problems, that we're making sure that everything we are doing or everything that the committee is deciding in relation to is pursuant to the legislation. We want to ensure that not only are we ticking the boxes, but we're making sure that everything we do complies with the requirements of the Act. Are we passing the appropriate resolutions? Are we passing them at the appropriate times? A lot of people sort of think, okay, there's a problem, we need to do this, we get on and do it. But we forget that actually it might be a decision for owners at a general meeting. Or, hey, stop, do we have the right authorities to do what we're doing? And applying a common sense and a commercial approach is very, very important anytime you're tackling a difficult situation. For example, I go back to a defects claim again, or even just, a claim for damages. You want to always understand what is the value of damages versus the cost to pursue those damages and make that commercial decision. So having the information early allows you to then guide and provide Strata Committee members the leadership that they need in order to make a decision in relation to a difficult matter or a dispute. But I also think knowing the problem is half the problem solved. So if you understand what the problem is, then you're going to have that skill set to give leadership and manage and resolve the issue. So that's very important. Knowing what the problem is, then you know how to carve it into smaller groups, know how to then address it and come up with a solution. Knowledge and expertise is very important as well. And leadership has to be backed by knowledge and expertise. You need to have the knowledge and expertise. So I always say that, you know, seeking advice on various matters will help you make that decision. And again, it goes back down to experts. We're not experts, and I'm not suggesting as Strata Managing Agents that we act as the expert or act as the lawyer, but as a minimum, managing agents should be giving that guidance. And the guidance might be that we need a financial, advice or tax advice on this for this reason, or we need legal advice on this for this reason. So I think having the knowledge of when advice is required, obtaining, financial advice if required at various times is crucial, but also working out what comes first and what comes second. So, the sequencing of resolutions of problems is very important. And for me, we're making decisions, but do we have the financial backing? Well, okay, we need to raise a special levy before we can actually engage experts. So when you identify the problem, you then need to work out, what are the issues? How do we address them? What do we do first? What do we do second? So for me, if, for example, we need to engage experts, the first thing I would say is, do we have the financial backing to engage these experts? Okay, we don't have the financial backing. So the next step before we engage those experts, before we brief those experts, is call a general meeting, raise the necessary funds. Obviously, you would obtain a fee proposal from the expert to understand what their fees will be. You would then have already briefed the expert to ensure that their proposal is in line with what is required, the scope and the brief. And then you'd call a general meeting, you'd raise a special levy, you then have the resolution of the Owners Corporation or the Strata Committee if it's a matter that they're deciding and can decide on. So I think it's very important understanding the problem and understanding what steps come first and second. Leadership on management of communications is essential. I think there's so many different parties that you're going to be communicating with as a leader on behalf of the Owners Corporation. And whilst you're corresponding with all these third parties, it's very important to report back to the Strata Committee because they are the group that will be making the decision. So reporting back to the Strata Committee is important. Keeping them informed is well important, but also providing transparency and circulating open and regular communications to an Owners Corporation is as equally important. Because Strata Committee member, remember, they're running the day-to-day matters. They are engaged to make those decisions, but there are going to be decisions that owners need to make. And there are going to be stages that we need to go back to a general meeting to obtain resolutions from the owners. How are we going to get owners to make those decisions if we're not keeping them informed as well and ensuring that they understand the issues to hand? But providing transparency for me has worked over the years because you're informing those owners, they become well informed to then make that decision. But equally, you're advising them and committee members on the pros and cons. As a managing agent, it's important to manage expectations and predicted outcomes. So if, as things are progressing, you're communicating to the Strata Committee, as a managing agent, you're letting the Strata Committee members know how things are progressing, what the legal advice is, what the expert input is. It's going to manage expectations. At the end, the result isn't going to be a surprise. Members are going to expect it. The owners are going to expect it. And as a committee, I strongly encourage that committee members be open and transparent with their group of owners because it's important that they're kept informed as well. Leadership as well, in terms of diffusing emotions, is important as well. So, diffusing emotions, acting as a buffer between disgruntled owners is very important because a lot of the times you find owners or committee members could make decisions emotionally. And I think as a leader, it's very important to assist committee members and guide them in removing the emotions and remain focused on the facts and how do we move forward. So I think that's very important. But at the same time, whilst managing those emotions, it's important for managing agents to remain neutral during difficult times, not take any side with any particular owner or committee member. I think it's important to understand that a managing agent is appointed to act on behalf of the Owners Corporation as a whole. It's not acting in relation to one owner or only the committee, but it's there to act in the best interest of the owners as a whole and collectively. We find in what we do quite a few Q&As, question and answer sessions, and we find that really works with a lot of owners and helps committee members and Strata Managing Agents become aligned when they go to a general meeting as well, because A Q&A will allow owners to raise questions. It allows committee members and Strata Managing Agents to inform owners of things that are happening. For example, you could have an annual general meeting, levies are increased or a special levy is raised, and not many people came to that general meeting because they didn't know that we're going to increase the budget, haven't read the material. They didn't know that we're going to raise, $500,000 special levy. And then the phone runs hot the day after and all the emails come in, why did we raise this levy? And everyone starts talking, the committee's spending too much money and why do we need all this money? So we find we then call a Q&A after that general meeting and invite everyone to that Q&A to discuss why we had to raise a special levy or why the budget was increased. And you find when you arm the owners with the information and educate them on the reasoning and why we're raising funds, they understand. So for me, it's arming them with the information. Communication is essential. And any successful project, any successful outcome is always backed by great communications. Strategy is very important as well because everything needs planning. Planning is vital, especially in difficult times. You never go into something all guns blazing. I always say we have a problem, okay? Remember I said carve it into smaller problems, but also understand what the problem is and then work out, okay, how do we plan? What do we need to do to achieve what we want to achieve? For example, when we walk into an annual general meeting, it's important that we're aligned with the Strata Committee. So the Strata Committee who's partnering with the managing agent to effectively manage the building, achieve resolution for the owners, achieve great results for the owners. It's important that we are planning what outcome do we want to achieve when we walk into this meeting? Do we need to get support to raise $500,000 special levy? Do we need to get support to raise another $1 million because, we're halfway through the legal proceedings, we're going well, but we just need them to hang on. We're almost at the end of the proceedings. How do we raise this additional funding? So for me, planning before you tackle a problem is important. Nutting out what the issues are and what you need to achieve is equally important. And I think it's very important that the committee members and the Strata Managing Agent are aligned so that together they could lead that way to the group of owners, being the owners corporation. But managing conflict and deadlocks is equally as important. For example, no one ever likes to put their hands in their pocket and pay for things that they don't need to pay, including me. I don't like to depart from $1 unless I need to. So I think it's important that managing agents as the leader educate and advise Strata Committee members as much as owners on their obligations versus a choice. Sometimes things are an obligation as opposed to a choice. For example, if we had to replace the lift because it's failed, it's no longer operational, it's not safe to operate, it's no longer a choice whether you wish to replace the lift, but it's now an obligation because under the Strata Schemes Management Act, Section 106 of the Act requires an owners corporation to repair and maintain common property. It's now an obligation that we have to raise these funds. I mean, I recently had a general meeting where I had a lot of owners against the Strata Committee saying, why are we raising this money? We don't need it's a lot of money. We can't afford this money. So it was a matter of educating the owners on why we needed to raise the money. It was educating them on why the lift needed to be replaced. It was advising them why the money had to be raised in 1 or 2 installments rather than, over the next couple of years, i.e. we had to do the repairs now as opposed to after. It was also educating them on the price in front of them was the best price because we went out to tender. This was the outcome of the tender. So again, arming them with the information, communicating, helped us get that $500,000 special levy over the line. But at the same meeting, again, being transparent, we advised them of other critical projects that were in the pipeline. For example, we had to repair the facade. There was some cracking in the facade. We also had to do some upgrades to some of the security intercom because it was no longer functioning. But we were being transparent to give them the heads up that we're going to be calling another general meeting potentially in the next 3 to 6 months to raise further funds. So that way, in 3 to 4 months, when the Strata Committee and our office go to this general meeting, owners are not going to be surprised because we've been transparent, we've given them the heads up, they're expecting this. So I think to manage conflict and deadlocks, communication is essential. Leadership in that communication for a managing agent is essential too, because Strata Committee members need that guidance. So coming to an end, summing it up, leadership for me, it's a skill set. It's something that will support the Strata Committee during difficult times and the Owners Corporation as a whole. Strata management 20 years ago, I say to a lot of people, isn't strata management today. 20 years ago, we paid a few invoices, we held a couple of meetings, simple resolutions, off we went. The type of schemes, the size of schemes that have now been developed are another level, which means strata management's also gone up to another level. We can no longer just pay some invoices, send a few emails. We need to give that leadership as managing agents to provide strata committee members support during difficult times. And leadership for me, as I've touched on, comes with various hats. It's the communication, it's the management of saying, it's giving advice when we need experts, engaging those experts at the right time, assisting with the briefing, but it's also being persistent and strong where things need to be done. So a lot of times strata committee members think, okay, it's all too difficult, we can't do this, or you know what, no way, these owners are never going to agree to a special levy, or these owners are not going to agree that we need to go down this path because they're so anti this. But I always say, look, at the end of the day, it's arming the owners with information, educating them, communicate with them, being transparent with them, that will get them across the line. And we find, even when we're adopting budgets, if you give a budget and you've got a line item plumbing $5,000 and you've got another line item gardening $3,000, it's very hard for owners to understand why you want to raise that money. But when you break up the $5,000 for plumbing and you break up the $3,000 for gardening, they'll understand there isn't very much cream in those budget allowance, and they're more likely to understand that they don't have a choice. This is what we need to raise to run the building, hence they need to accept the budget. So I think, again, giving that information, but as strata managing agents, giving that committee that leadership, that it's all about communication and owners need to understand that, then you're likely to get that decision. That concludes the session in terms of what I have to say, Nikki. I don't know if there's some questions that owners or whoever's listening, our listeners, like to ask.
We do actually, Leanne, have some questions. Before that, I'd just like to mention, I'm sure everybody else took notes. I certainly took lots of notes while you were speaking that I can refer back to. So I think that was great. And some of the things that I thought were really interesting, you mentioned about choices versus obligations, and these are just things that we have regularly, which because we send questions through to you all of the time. They're topics that we see come up in Q&As that get sent to us from committees. So that choices versus obligations, and strata managers making that clear to the committees to say what is a choice of theirs and what they are obliged to do. And the other thing that I thought that was really interesting was the idea, we have so many questions that come in where committees are not in alignment with their strata manager, and there is a conflict between those two groups. And it's really great to hear you say that you're working in the best interest of the building, and if both parties can put the same hat on and work as a team to solve the issues and work together, obviously that works a lot better in that situation for the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's a partnership, and a partnership can only be successful if communication is strong, but equally both partners are aligned and on the same page. And I think it's so important that anytime you address a group of owners, that your committee and your managing agent are aligned, because then they're looking at the two partners that are engaged and appointed by them as a group of owners to manage the scheme on their behalf. So again, for me, I keep touching on and harping on about communication. It's so essential during any difficult time. Communication, both in leading the strata committee and as managing agents, corresponding with your committee very regular and closely so they can understand the issues in full detail, not just at high level, but at full detail. So if you're keeping them included in the correspondence, not only are they getting your updates, but they're also receiving the updates directly from experts or lawyers or from any third party. One of our concepts is we blind copy in our strata committee members on absolutely everything we do, whether it's a response to a tenant, a third party being council, an adjoining neighbour. We copy in our committee members, and it's not to inundate them with so much correspondence, but it's to ensure that they're well informed of issues as they're progressing, because they need to make the decisions. We can't do that on their behalf. Our role as strata managing agents is to give them that leadership, give them that guidance, give them those options, and then seek resolution and instructions on those options and the situation, and then we execute accordingly. So committee members have a role, and in my view, their role is to make those decisions. But how can they make those decisions if they're not given that leadership? And I think as a minimum, managing agents have to give that leadership. And I'm not suggesting, as I said before, that we act as lawyers or we act as consultants and engineers, because it's not our expertise. But as a minimum, they should be giving that leadership and that guidance.
Definitely. Okay, that makes so much sense. And I think there is that lack of communication sometimes, and we do see it in the questions that we get between committee members and also from lot owners, which you can understand more. They don't understand the role that the Strata Manager plays, and that the Strata Managing Agent is there to guide them and to provide the information. And then it's the committee's decision to make. They have to make the decision ultimately. So yeah, it's good to hear that. Okay, we have had questions that have come in, so we might cover some of them. So one of the questions that was submitted to us, this one was from Geeta. The question was, our OCM has been speaking unprofessionally about a lot owner to external parties. The owner has been advised of the negative comments by various people, and the committee has no idea how to deal with such matters, as they all have limited OC experience. So what can we do?
Okay, so just to cap on that, you're saying that a lot owner is speaking negative regarding the Strata Committee and the Owners Corporation to other lot owners?
No, the Strata Manager, sorry. The Strata Manager is the one that's speaking unprofessionally about a lot owner to external parties.
Okay. So for me, and so this is a lot owner that is obviously seeking this advice, I would firstly address the Strata Managing Agent regarding the issue, i.e., I'm assuming that the Strata Managing Agent is speaking about this lot owner about a difficult matter or an issue that might not be in agreement on, so they're not agreeing on the subject. So my suggestion would be to approach a Strata Managing Agent, discuss the issue, but keep the emotions out, because when you talk emotions, things just escalate unnecessarily. For me, I'd remain focused on what the issue is and try to resolve that issue with that managing agent by moving forward. So it's a bit hard to give a bit more than that, Nick, without actually understanding what the nature of the issue is, because for me, I don't want to give advice on the emotional side of it, because obviously it is emotional when you've got a managing agent that's speaking unprofessionally about its owner, because it is part of their clients. I wouldn't encourage that, but if it's happening, I would say to this owner that approach a managing agent professionally, keep the emotions out. And obviously the managing agent is speaking about this owner, particularly about a subject matter, and maybe remain focused on that matter rather than why that managing agent is talking about them, but focus on that matter and try to resolve that matter.
Okay, thank you, Leanne. That great information. Also, we had a question from Philip saying the biggest problem is managers just want peace. This comes at the expense of maintenance works because of a very few strong complaints. My experience is managers cause bigger maintenance issues because of their poor skills.
I can't comment on what others are doing, but I can definitely say that you do need the leadership. So going back, you might, and I'm not saying everyone wears the same hat and everyone's, labeled with the same. It is difficult, but managing agents shouldn't just be going for the quick solution. It should be going for the best solution and the best outcome for the owners corporation. So for me, as committee members, the buck stops with you. You make that final decision. So if your managing agent is telling you to go left, but you feel that you should be going right, or you're not sure whether you go left or right, then seek advice. Suggest to your managing agent, I want to get advice on this, whether it's an expert, whether it's a legal advice, depending on what the nature is. So your managing agent is there to administrate the management of your scheme, execute the decisions that you make. And we've just touched on how can they assist you during difficult times, which is that leadership. But the buck stops with you as committee members. You make that decision. And if you're not feeling comfortable with the direction or the leadership that you're receiving, or you feel that the managing agent's given you a solution that is the quick fix, but not necessarily the best fix, then stop and say, appreciate your advice. However, I suggest that we get legal advice if it's a legal matter, or I suggest that we get an engineer's advice if it's a structural matter, and so on. So I would always say, go beyond your managing agent if you're not satisfied with that outcome.
And another good skill of the Strata Manager, of course, is the fact that they usually know which expert to obtain information from as well. Is that right, Leanne? You've got quite a good network of contacts. And
yeah, absolutely. And that's when I was touching on that leadership and having that knowledge of what experts, when to bring them in and how to brief them. Absolutely. And we have a panel of different experts. And, over the years, you drop some off because, they haven't done so great. And over the years, you pick up more that have done better. And it's all about using the right experts as well. I say a successful business is run by a successful leader, but also its team, having the right staff. But equally, a building is managed good with the right managing agent, but equally with its experts. You're going to have the right engineer on board, the right lawyer on board. It's everyone contributing their part. It's not one person. So it's having the right people around.
Okay, so we had another question from Jay saying, are there obligations, are there organisational charts or flow charts to visually depict where people fit, like strata managers, committee trades, real estate agents, and who they report to, etc.?
In terms of the hierarchy and the authority chain?
I'd say so, yeah. I'd imagine that that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, look, there aren't charts available. I mean, I'm happy to put something together and share it with you, Nikki, so that you could actually send to this member. But basically, I can go through it quickly now. You've got your owners corporation that is sitting at the top. You then got your strata committee below the owners corporation. And then below the strata committee is your strata managing agent. And then if you've got a building manager involved, it's your building manager below the building manager. And then you've potentially got your subcontractors and contractors and trades and service providers that are sitting under the direction of your strata managing agent together with your building manager if you have a building manager. But that is the hierarchy in my experience. So basically, owners corporation appoint the strata committee to act on their behalf. They also then appoint a managing agent to assist with the administration of the scheme and executing the decisions that your committee are making together with you as a group of owners. And then the strata managing agent has to manage the contractors and service providers, including its building manager, on behalf of the owners corporation, because those providers are also involved in providing a service to the group of owners, whether it's a maintenance service, whether it's a works being carried out on site. So your managing agent is managing all those different parties on behalf of the owners corporation.
Okay, great question, Jay. Thank you very much for asking that. And thanks, Leanne. That was a really great overview. And if you could put something together for us, we would love that. And then we can put a link to it below the video and people can access it as well. Yeah, so that would be excellent. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that, everybody, and we'll get that out to you at some point in the near future. Okay, we have one from Colin asking, how many strata can an agent manager and give the so I think they're asking how many strata buildings can a strata agent manage and give the support needed to understand the size of the strata may have an effect. So
very good question, very good question. And the reason why I say that is because there is no number. There is no magic number that everyone needs to work with. It varies across various companies and concept of management. I have, in all my years in strata, always wanted to focus on quality as opposed to the quantity. And the reason why I say it is because quantity is essential in strata management, especially the way we manage today versus 20 years ago. I feel too much of a large portfolio is not possible. Not only does it run the strata manager down, but it also diminishes the value and quality of service that we then end up providing to committee members and an owners corporation. So for me, the smaller the portfolio, the better, because it allows your strata manager to focus on issues in more detail, provide more attention to a smaller group of clients rather than stretching itself over too many clients. In turn, the client is receiving value, it's getting the attention, it's getting the proactiveness as opposed to reactive or non-reactive, but it's equally also ensuring that strata managers are not getting burnt out. Most times you'll find that the strata manager is very competent, but it's the large portfolio that they have been assigned to look after. And that's why they haven't been able to respond to you timely, or they're not providing you detailed responses. It's because they're trying to put out too many fires and they're stretched over too many clients and schemes. So our concept and my concept for all my years that I've been in strata is focus on a smaller group, provide that extra attention and level of leadership and management that is now needed, because remember I said strata management today is another scale, another level. They're larger schemes, they're more complex, legislation has gone to another level. We're pretty much red taped, not only strata managing agents, but also strata committee and owners corporations. There's obligations on everyone. So to manage those obligations, you need to ensure that you have the time to manage them well. And I'm sure everyone online today, whether they're a strata manager, a committee member or an owner, has already experienced firsthand that strata issues aren't resolved in one step. They're not resolved in 1 hour or 1 day. Strata issues go back and forth. And it's because there's multiple moving parts. There's multiple members involved in the decision-making or in the problem. So there's various groups that you need to consult with. So for me, it's important to focus on a small size portfolio. But the short answer is there is no legal requirement on the maximum number that a managing agent can look after. But my recommendation and belief has always been a smaller portfolio backed with a full-time assistant strata manager as well. So they're looking after a lot of the administration. So your strata manager who's on that front line can focus on delivering the quality. And that quality is the knowledge, the expertise, the leadership, attending meetings, corresponding with committee members and giving them that guidance.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Leanne. I had a question that I wanted to ask you as well, and I was going to save it till later if we had enough time, but I think now is probably a really good time to bring it up. And the reason that I asked is from what the discussion you've just had there are so many different models out there in strata management. Like some businesses run it completely differently and they don't do any of the accounts, and they've got like the accounts department, other people are doing accounts as well, and it's all structured differently. So the question I was going to ask you was, if an owner's corporation is looking for a new strata manager, what tips do you have for them to ensure that they engage someone they can work well with and that fits their needs?
Very good question. I would say look beyond the badge, number one. And what I mean by that is look at the personnel, the leadership and the knowledge and the experience that is behind that badge. A badge is one thing, but it's the people behind it that is important to understand their level of experience. I think it's important to understand their concept of management. Are they having larger portfolios assigned to their managers? Do they have smaller size portfolios? And then thirdly, understand how do they support their managers as a business? What support staff do they have and do they invest in? You know, you mentioned the different concepts of accounts departments and insurance claims departments. I personally don't like too many departments on the front line. I just think that too many hands in a pie is a messy pie. I like to limit the communications between our clients and a strata manager to that, only the strata managing agent and the clients and then the assistant. But it's not to say that you don't utilize a back engine, and that back engine for me is various, staffing, accounting staff, administrational staff, and so on. So for me, I'd look at who's behind the badge, the expertise and the knowledge of the leader and management team, as well as the years of experience that the manager that they're appointing to your scheme, understanding what size portfolio that they manage, but also understanding what type of schemes they manage as well. So looking at, do they have a lot of experience in large schemes, smaller schemes, understand what your issues are in terms of your strata scheme and seeing what experience do they have in managing those issues. We pick up so many schemes in relation to defect management because it's one of our strengths. We love it. We love managing defects. It's all about mediating between the parties, getting the parties, on the same page, moving forward, getting resolution. We're also good in conflict resolution. And again, that comes back down to strong leadership and so on. So I'd be looking at that as a starting point.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Leanne. That's great. We had a question from Philip come in saying there's a lot of talk about the committee making decisions. Why don't managers do training sessions or supply information to committee members? Committee people don't have the skills and a lot totally rely on their managers. Not all managers are good at what they do. When their front end staff turn over continuously and they're poorly trained, it creates problems.
Yes, I'm sure that does happen. And I'm sure there are a lot of agents out there as well that do train their staff. And I think training is a critical point because, like you said, you're going to get, and that's why I touched on at the end by saying that leadership is a skill set. It's something that you either have or you don't have. And, you've got your rainmakers, you've got your leaders, and then you've got people that are great at doing the administration work, but they're not great at leading or communicating. So look, for me, it is important to train your strata committee members, and that's something that I touched on in the presentation earlier, that strata managing agents have to communicate with their strata committee members, but give them that leadership, educating them on their obligations, educating them on what we need in this scenario. For example, as I touched on, do we need an expert? Okay, if we do, why? Okay, we need the expert, but we also need financials to back it. Okay, how do we raise the money? Okay, we call a general meeting. So I do believe that when you are managing a strata scheme as managing agents, indirectly you are mentoring and training those strata committee members, and you are giving them that leadership. So I know there are strata managing agents, and we do from time to time run some training sessions for committee members and hold some owner forums as well on industry topics. But it's something that I think a managing agent, you're appointing them to manage the scheme on your behalf. they're there with that professional expertise to do, but at the same time, they need your decision making as committee members. So anytime they require your decision, it's up to them to educate you so that you can then make that decision. It's about being informed and making that decision. So I think training comes indirectly by mentoring, coaching, and leading a strata committee, in my experience.
Okay, that's great. And we've just had a question come in from Sebastian just saying, can a committee member be nominated as the strata manager? Do they need a license, or can they operate without licenses in strata management?
Sorry, say that again, Nikki. It cut out on my end slightly.
That's fine. Sorry. Can a committee be nominated as a strata manager? And I think what they're asking is who can be a strata manager in New South Wales? Like, can someone stand up and just say, I'll be the strata manager and that's it? Or do you need to be licensed?
No, you definitely need to be licensed, but that's separate to self-managing. So I'll come back to self-management in a moment. So if you are going to be a managing agent appointed by an owners corporation, you're going to enter into an agency agreement and be paid a fee to manage the scheme, then you need to be a licensed agent. And now the industry has become part of the professional standard scheme, which I was really excited about, where there's professional standards for our industry. And I think it's fantastic because it's going to really lift everyone's game. And it's something that the industry and SCA in particular, Strata Community Australia, push for, and they successfully had as part of a professional standard scheme. So you need a license if you're going to be charging a fee to manage the scheme. But under the Act, you can self-manage a scheme. So a committee member, together with the committee, can self-manage the scheme. Because under the Act, you have to nominate office bearers, chairman, secretary, and treasurer, together with your committee. When you have a managing agent, those office bearers' positions are delegated to your managing agent through the instrument in writing, being your agency agreement. But if you don't have a managing agent involved, hence there is no managing agreement, then you've elected your committee. Within that committee, you've elected your office bearers. Those office bearers can self-manage the scheme. So it can be self-managed.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for the clarification. I had another few questions that I wanted to cover with you, Leanne, as well. Now that we've got a little bit of time, we haven't got a lot of time, but we've got a little bit of time. So one of the questions was, when it comes to defect restoration, I know you've touched on this a little bit, but what role does the strata manager play in that particular issue?
The strata manager needs to be the one that is managing all the moving parts and managing all that communication. So if you've got defects in the building, whether it's under warranty or it's just defects because the common property has failed, as a managing agent, you need to take the active lead by engaging experts on behalf of the owners corporation. But again, it's obtaining the fee proposals, briefing the right experts and identifying what experts are needed, and then refer to the strata committee for their instructions. But getting an expert involved, taking leadership in managing that expert, taking leadership in managing the communications between the expert, the strata committee, owners, and any other third party. So for me, it's just managing it from start to end and taking that leadership.
Okay, and good documentation, I'd imagine, as well.
Absolutely. And that all comes part of the process without going into the detailed mechanics, like, calling the meetings to pass those resolutions and decisions, providing fee proposals to the committee, sending emails with the information that they need to make the decision that you need as managing agent to now move to the next step. First step is the fee proposal. Second step is send it to the strata committee for review, have a meeting to discuss it, potentially invite some of those experts to a meeting so that committee members can gauge a level of expertise and knowledge from that expert. So in turn, they're not just looking at a paper proposal, they're actually meeting with those experts and deciding based on that interview and first discussion, who showcased more knowledge, who is probably most suited for their scheme, who can they best work with, and then they make that decision. And when they make that decision, you then facilitate and administrate as a managing agent the inspections, the access that that expert now needs to the common property or to multiple lots to then come back with a defects report. And then when the defects report, I strongly recommend having a meeting, because you can get a 400-page report or a 100-page report. It's quite overwhelming. Again, it's not our expertise as managing agent, but equally it's not the expertise of the committee members. So then you invite that expert to a meeting and have that expert walk you through their findings. And at the end, ask them questions about their recommendations in that report. Because every recommendation is going to come with pros and cons. So it's important that you understand the pros, but you also understand the consequences too. So you can say, okay, there is risk, but I think we'll mitigate our risk if we go down this way. So I think it's important understanding it thoroughly to then make those decisions. And the managing agent's role is to lead, administrate it, bring all the information back to committee members so they're well armed and well informed to make that decision.
Okay, so in the instance where you have got quite a proactive committee who are happy to put in the time, and is it cost effective in the long run for them to take on a lot of the management role, and or what should they be relying on for their strata manager?
I don't think it's about cost effective. I think it's about liability and risk. And as I touched on, strata management's a lot more complex now. So the more complex, the more risks come with it. And I'm talking about risks of, making the wrong decision or no decision, or, losing money, causing injury because of a repair, or, having a loss suffered by a lot owner. We've had claims where there was defects and the only way to fix it was encroaching onto lot property. A committee member without expertise understanding, okay, if you're going to encroach on common property, you need to have an easement registered. This owner today, Nikki, you're the owner and you're happy for the owners corporation to help them address their problem. So that's okay. You can encroach my common property by building another wall, for example, inside the structural wall that is failed, sandwich the wall that's failed. You're now encroaching into my space. I'm happy for you to do that, owners corporation. But in 2 years' time, Nikki, you've sold. The new owner comes in, picks up, you've encroached the space, and now owners corporation has an issue. So for me, it's the risk and the liability that comes with managing a scheme. As managing agents, we carry that burden. And I think if you've got the expertise, and there was one question earlier saying that as committee members, we don't have that expertise. And it's true, because committee members have their profession, they have their day jobs, their expertise is in their job. It's important for me to leave it with the experts and leave it with a licensed strata managing agent that's going to have experience in managing complex issues, challenging issues across their portfolio. And they've worked with experts and worked with lawyers. So they're going to be a privy to all of that, but they can then utilise that knowledge and expertise over to your strata scheme. So my advice is definitely to invest in a licensed strata managing agent. The key is obviously the right managing agent.
Okay, definitely. All right, we had a question from Peter that came in. This might be the last question. We'll see how we go. And the question is, if maintenance is required, but the owners reject the motion to raise special levies and the strata manager can't do anything about it, is there a legal body who can order the levies to be raised as the maintenance is crucial?
Absolutely. So there isn't necessarily, the tribunal would be where you would go. So for me, I'd go back to my earlier advice. As a managing agent, I'd stand up very strong and explain it is an obligation. If you fail to repair and maintain common property, I would at that very same meeting as a managing agent stand up and say, it only takes one lot owner and even one committee member to make an application to the tribunal, prove that the owners corporation is not meeting its obligations under the Strata Schemes Management Act, and it only has to prove that it's not meeting one or more of its obligations, and they can even go for compulsory appointment as well as seek an order to have that maintenance carried out or that repair carried out. And obviously when you get an order, if you're successful in getting an order to repair the common property because it's failed, then owners corporation by default are going to be forced to raise that special levy in order to comply with that order. And a compulsory appointment is something that you don't want. It's where the owners corporation has no voting rights, or the owners. Their owners are stripped, and the managing agent that's appointed under compulsory appointment is acting as the owners and the owners corporation. They make all the decisions for that term that they're appointed. And a tribunal will appoint a compulsory appointment if they feel that an owners corporation is not making decisions. Either it's dysfunctional or not meeting one or more of its duties that it's required under the Act.
And Peter's just asking for clarification, Leanne, what is the tribunal?
Sorry, so it's the ANCAT. So it's a tribunal where owners can make application. It's not the court. It's not as formal as court. It's a starting point. Call it the small court, I call it, but it's the tribunal where you go there, you make application, you have a tribunal member, similar to having a judge, and the tribunal member will hear the application. It will hear the applicant side, the defendant side, and then they make a ruling. So very much like a court hearing, but it's a mini court. And you can apply, so you apply for mediation before you go to a hearing. Either party can decline to attend mediation, and if a party declines mediation, then the applicant moves to the next stage, which is applying for a hearing and seeking orders.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Are made on behalf.
Excellent. Okay, so that probably is the last question that we've got time for. We've got comments coming through to say thanks very much, really great presentation. So quickly before we go, because we've just got a few more minutes, we have a few things just to cover at the end of the session. So if you did happen to submit a question via chat or into us and we haven't had a chance to attend to it, or you've got something else that's come out of the session that you'd like to ask Leanne, please feel free, just jump on our site, the LookUpStrata site, and go to the Ask a Strata question page, and you could submit the question that way and we'll send that through to Leanne and get a response back to you as soon as we can. Before we go, as always, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Leanne. I know how busy you are and how busy you've been over the last few months, so it's really great that you've put the time aside to come and provide us with this information. It was really, really helpful. I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure everybody else feels like they did as well.
Yeah, no, thanks, Nikki. Like I said, it's always great to be online, and I love contributing to LookUpStrata. It's great to be able to assist the community, in particular our Strata owners. I mean, Strata's been my life. I breathe it. I love it. It's definitely a passion, and I think it's something that I've enjoyed doing over the years. And like I said, it's been great contributing to LookUpStrata. So thank you for the opportunity. I thank the listeners. I hope today they've walked away with a few tips, even if it's one that they can go back and work with their managing agent on. I think it was worthwhile and it's a plus. So I do hope that everyone found today's session informative, and hopefully we look forward to being online again in future.
Definitely. I'm sure that, we'll have you back in front of our audience fairly soon, and we'll be in touch about that as well. And I usually cover this before we jump online, but we didn't have time this morning, but we always ask our presenters if they've got some news to share with us, but I know you've got some news to share with us from the recent SCA events. So if you'd just like to let us know what's been happening for you, both in New South Wales state and also nationally in regarding the SCA, that'd be great.
Yeah, so late last year, we actually won the New South Wales Medium Manager Award of the Year. So it was a huge achievement for our team, and it was credit to our team, all their great efforts and work, and that was really, really exciting. It was the first time that we entered the award, so I think it was a great win. We attended the national conference, the Strata conference in Melbourne last week. Besides being extremely cold, it was fantastic, and the focus of that conference was all about sustainabilities and how we can save on energy and energy options through our Strata schemes, and it's definitely the way the future is heading. We've now got a lot of schemes as well that are looking at even electric vehicle chargers in their car parks, and I think we're going to see more and more of it in the newer developments. But I think we're going to see, updated technology on chargers and things like that. So a lot's always happening in Strata. There's never a dull moment, as I say, in Strata, and we're always busy, every Strata manager, I think, because it's such a fast-paced job. But it's great, like I said, and good things are happening. I can see the industry is moving in a very good direction. I'm really excited, as I touched on, about being part of the professional standards scheme. It's something that, we've always been strong about, and something we as a business always focused on was employing only licensed Strata managers. And that's also a change in the industry, where the legislation is now requiring a manager individually to be licensed, not just the agency. And that's something that the industry is now moving into. We're fortunate, all our managers are licensed, because it's always been a business requirement for us, in particular for me, as I always, notice a significant difference between certificate holders and license holders, even just the education around it. So, but yeah, it's great. It's cold coming into the cold season, but we're always busy. Even during the lockdowns, we were busy.
Definitely. No, we'd have to agree with that as well from a national point of view. We saw that in every state as well. But we congratulate you for the awards. It was really great for us to see you achieving those awards in New South Wales and on that national level, because you always have been such a great supporter of LookUpStrata, and we've worked fairly closely together over probably the last 6 years. So it's been really great to see. So congratulations again from us, and I'm sure from all of your the viewers that are in here today as well. People are popping in congratulations in the comment section, so that's really good to see. So again, Leanne, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone who's jumped into the session today. Thanks for the chat. We really love to see all of those comments and questions and feedback on how the session's gone coming up in the chat. So thank you very much for that, and we'll see you again, Leanne, for another session very shortly, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nikki. Stay warm.
All right. Thank you very much. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this educational session. If you gained value from the information, please like this video. You can also engage further with LookUpStrata by subscribing to our YouTube channel, or by being kept informed about Strata news via our regular newsletters. Our subscribe link is listed in the description box below.